Predators go 2-0 during a critical weekend doubleheader. We'll have the high points from this past weekend and a look ahead to a crucial showdown with the Penguins tonight on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
Your Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked On Predators podcast your first listen of the day. And how about that new catchy intro music, Ann Kimmel? Yeah,
rocking out to it. We were rocking out to it here. Hopefully everybody listening was too.
Yeah. I feel like we should be introing like some guidance counselor video or something like that. It's very upbeat. It's very uplifting. I love it.
That's right.
Hey, we're the Locked On Predators podcast. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast that's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, want to give a special shout out to our loyal Locked On Pred heads, the everydayers who tune into every single show. We love you guys and we appreciate the support you give us week in and week out. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio.
Big show today for what is going to be a big Monday for the Nashville Predators, who are riding high after a 2-0 weekend doubleheader. Big win over the Blackhawks and a big win, although maybe a little bit closer than expected win, over the Columbus Blue Jackets at home for the home finale. We will take a look at the weekend takeaways from that game, plus some plus minus for the highs and lows of this past week. We will also look ahead to a crucial showdown for the Predators tonight, the last game of the regular season against the Pittsburgh Penguins. A lot at stake for Nashville tonight in terms of playoff seeding, but boy, are there a lot more at stake for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So this isn't a game you're going to want to miss to skip ahead into the postseason. We'll dive into all that today. First, though, I want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. All right, Ann, Nashville Predators needed to take care of business this weekend. A doubleheader in Chicago against the Blackhawks. And then they had a home game Saturday against the Columbus Blue Jackets. You and I called this a little bit of a trap game. We were kind of just like slowly keeping our eye on it, because the Nashville Predators have kind of not done well in situations like this before. But Nashville Predators come out with a big result. 5-1 win over the Blackhawks, 6-4 win over the Columbus Blue Jackets. And how are you feeling after what you saw on the ice during these weekend games?
It's a mixed bag for me. Obviously, really thrilled that the Predators got 4 points. At this point, the more points, the better. So mixed bag in the sense that, yes, the Predators got 2 wins. I'm not sure that we saw Nashville's best hockey, especially in that Columbus Blue Jackets game. That third period sort of felt a little bit like street hockey, where the game they kind of got away from like a disciplined, structured game, maybe a little bit. But I do think all in all, for what these games were, I think it's very difficult to mentally be in the perfect space for games when you've already locked up a postseason spot. And I think it's different for the Predators because nobody thought that they would. So there are a lot of different emotions around the team right now. So yes, thrilled that they got the 4 points, thrilled that they got the 2 wins. I think it was a great environment at Bridgestone for that Columbus last home game of the regular season. Would have liked to have seen a little bit cleaner game, maybe, but overall, 4 points is 4 points in a back-to-back with travel in between. I mean, can't squawk too much about it.
No, I think the takeaway for me is You saw exactly what you wanted to see from the Predators on Friday, which was start
Mm-hmm.
to finish, whistle to whistle. Everybody was on their P's and Q's. You could tell they were not playing down to Chicago's level. They were really pushing the issue. I think they wound up with 40 shots on goal against the Blackhawks, as opposed to the Blackhawks had like 23, 24, I want to say,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So it was a dominant game,
Yeah.
5-1 win. And I thought you really saw kind of what you wanted to see from the Predators in that situation there, which was just manhandling a weaker team when, for playoff positioning purposes, you wanted some points.
Right.
Uh, Columbus was that was the interesting one, Anne, because if you would have, if we would have just stopped and had this conversation, let's say, at the end of the second mission or second, intermission, and we were recording
Mm-hmm.
the podcast, then I would have been like, yeah, absolutely the same thing. Exactly what you wanted to see from the Nashville Predators in this situation, other than maybe a little bit of a sloppy get go of the game. And then, they kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit in that third period. I don't think it was playing down to Columbus at any level. I think maybe it was just the back to back got to them a little bit. Maybe they got tired. That's kind of the benefit of the doubt that I take away from that.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And it was one of those things where you're like that last 20 minutes, when the game wrapped up, obviously thrilled to get the 2 points, but you just sort of knew Andrew Brunette was going to be like, "Hey guys, we got to have a chat about that last 20 minutes." First 40 minutes, again, I think they handled business really, really well. And you've got to like what you saw kind of across the board in these two games, really, from most of the Nashville Predators. In the Chicago game, I give a shout out to Kevin Lankinen. That's his former team. And going in there, really played a great game. And I know it's just Chicago, but they've got one of the best shooters in Connor Bedard on that team. So I think Kevin Lankinen did a great job. I think the defense did a great job in front of him. So shout out to that. Philip Forsberg, not just content with breaking the franchise record, has to break it and then pad the franchise record. So you liked what you see out of Philip Forsberg. And then you look at this Columbus Blue Jackets game, and you've got great performances from Roman Josi and Tommy Novak. I think Luke Evangelista kind of blossomed over these two games. So you
100%.
like what you saw in these two games, but I agree with you that last 20 minutes of Columbus, that there was a conversation in the locker room like, "Hey guys, great that we got the win, but can't play like that." And here's what I like. Nashville will know that going into tonight's game against Pittsburgh. Because tonight's game against Pittsburgh, you can't have that kind of last 20 minutes. And Nashville knows that. So, I'm not particularly concerned that it's going to carry over. It just wasn't that fun to watch.
Yeah, I think again, the benefit of the doubt for me is just saying they were tired at the end of the back-to-back. At least that's how I'm talking about. You mentioned heading into the postseason, Ann, and you mentioned tonight's game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. This is going to be, I think, an absolutely critical game. Yeah. Not just because, the Nashville Predators are fighting for position in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but also because Pittsburgh, they're just fighting to be in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Right. And this is a must-win game for them. So we will look at tonight's game, plus where the Predators are in the playoff picture right now, coming up in just 1 second. First, I want to mention today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive in the garage. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Ann, it's not just hockey that we have to talk about here coming up in the sports world. In the worlds of Hank Williams Jr., Ann, are you ready for some football?
Yes. Is that happening tonight?
No, but we do have the NFL draft a couple of weeks away, and Locked On is busting out their NFL mock draft live. It's coming up this week on April 17th at 7 o'clock Eastern, streaming on the Locked On Sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. You can find Ultimate 6-episode series on April 17th at 7 o'clock Eastern to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even from the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL mock draft, again, April 17th at 7 o'clock Eastern, streaming live on Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. That's a whiles away, and we have a lot of hockey to get to before we get to anything NFL draft related. Titans fans, do you even really want to talk football right now?
They're talking a lot about the draft down here. Wide receiver, offensive lineman, wide receiver, offensive lineman. We'll see what happens later. But like you said, more immediate hockey on the horizon here for Nashville.
Yeah, including a big one tonight against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Here's where it stands right now. The Nashville Predators, 1 game left, sitting pretty at 99 points right now. So for the Nashville Predators, 1 point is the critical one, because that is the one that locks you in to the first wild card spot. It's still possible if they don't win tonight, but both Vegas and LA, the two teams who are most likely to supplant Nashville, have 2 games in hand, but Nashville has a tiebreaker over both of them. So all they really need to do is get 1 point, get to 100, and they should. And you and I were trying to find a scenario where this wasn't the case,
right?
But we couldn't. So I'm pretty sure the Predators get 1 point. They are the wild card 1 spot.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So on the other hand, we have the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Ooh, friends.
One of four teams within 1 point of the last wild card spot in the Eastern Conference. Washington has it now with 87 points. Red Wings have 87 points. Flyers have 87 points. Pittsburgh, with 2 games left, 86 points. So you look at Nashville needing a point to get the wild card 1 spot. Maybe you could argue a favorable matchup against the Canucks. And on the other hand, you have Pittsburgh fighting for their playoff lives. This isn't going to be, one of those end of season, we're just going to trot out some people and try to be healthy for the playoffs. This is going to be a playoff game for both teams, Anne. So how do the Predators handle this?
Well, I think you have to remember the words of the brilliant poet laureate from the United States, Taylor Swift, and say, bad blood, baby. We got bad blood. So yes, the Predators need a point to lock up a wild card spot. Yes, the Penguins are literally fighting for their life. But let's not forget, these two teams do not like each other anyway. So this game is a cauldron bubbling over, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens tonight. A lot of the pressure is on Pittsburgh, because truly, if they lose this game, it's basically close to season over for them, if it isn't guaranteed season over. So this is a must win for them. For Nashville, I think, again, Andrew Brunette's really focusing on getting everybody ready for the postseason. And Nashville probably has close to a week. We don't know the final dates yet between regular season ending and kicking off the postseason. So there's time built in for rest. I expect Andrew Brunette may rest perhaps a couple of players, But this is going to be, like you said, this is not just two teams delicately playing hockey on the ice tonight to stay healthy for the postseason. This is two teams with something to play for, who, by the way, don't even like each other. So tonight is going to be huge, and it's in unfriendly territory. Let's face it, they're playing on the road in Pittsburgh. So that's going to be an environmental issue for the Predators to deal with. I think this is going to be a battle tonight. I think you are looking at a game temperature very similar to the 2017 Stanley Cup Finals, maybe down a notch or two, but not by much. So great game tonight. It's an exciting way to end the season for the Predators. It would be super fun. Let's just be real and let's just be petty, as we are sometimes here at Locked On Preds. It would be amazing if Nashville kind of nailed the coffin shut on this one for the Penguins. It's going to be it's a big hockey game tonight, y'all. You wouldn't think at this point the Predators would have a big hockey game left. This is a big hockey game, and you want to end the regular season with an exclamation point, not with a whimper. So they're going to have to bring it tonight.
Yeah. Is it, I guess, fitting if the Predators win 1-0 tonight on a Colton Sissons goal?
Oh my gosh, Colton Sissons, please score tonight. And he did. He got rest. I believe Sissons was one of the ones that was out against Columbus. So he should, hopefully Sissons will be back in and he can score and we can all count it this time. So yeah let's do that.
You mentioned, the possibility of Brunette resting some people. We saw it in both games over the weekend. He rotated some guys in and out. I guess, what do you think about that in terms of the game tonight, Anne? Because I can see what's going to happen. Like, I can kind of see what people in Nashville are afraid of. You don't actively try to win this game. You rest some people. You take some guys out of the lineup. You lose this game. You wound up getting past for wild card one spot. And then you play Dallas, who's right now maybe the best team in the entire NHL. And you get, stomped in 5 games or something like that. Are fans going to look back and say, why didn't we try harder in this game? Like, why didn't we put our A game out there to try to get the better matchup? The other thing, Anne, that to keep in mind here is that the NHL season goes through Thursday.
Right.
So there's still games left to be played up till Thursday. Tonight's the Preds' last one, but they're going to be guaranteed a 3-day rest, at least up until the playoffs start. It would be Saturday, I think, is when the NHL said was the start round one.
I think they were saying Saturday, maybe Sunday. So there's a chunk of time off.
Yeah. So, the Nashville Predators are going to be able to get some guys rested. I don't know, and I kind of fall in that same category, whereas I think just because you have an opportunity to kind of put your playoff fate in your own hands. Also, Nashville hasn't gotten to 100 points since they won the Central Division. Back in 2019, which, dear God, was 5 years ago at this point. Where does time fly?
How did that happen? Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't want the Preds to look back and, sort of realize it's like this was the opportunity. Why didn't we do more to take it? And the Predators have a chance to get to 100. They have a chance to lock up their own playoff fate, not have to scoreboard watch the rest of the week. I don't know. I get not wanting people to get hurt, but it just seems like to me the Predators should be putting their best out there.
I agree with you. And I agree with you that I think that if the Predators don't, they will look back at this game and feel some regret about it. And Andrew Brunette and the team has said, and I do believe that they mean this, for the most part, they're like, we'll play whoever you put out there. And I do believe that. But if you can lock it up tonight with the win against Pittsburgh and face off against Vancouver, you just have to be honest and say right now that is a more favorable matchup. And that's not a rip on the Canucks. That's just saying I think it's a better matchup. The other thing, too, is you mentioned there's a longer rest period here. Andrew Brunette probably wants to keep these lines together. You know, you want to keep chemistry going. You want to keep these guys playing with each other in games at game speed as fresh as you can. So perhaps one or two guys may be rested. I would not be at all surprised, though, to see Andrew Brunette start basically the big guys. Like, I don't know that we'll see Ryan O'Reilly out. You know, he hasn't had a rest day yet. So he would be the one I would think maybe would have a rest day. I really hope he does not keep Philip Forsberg out, because you want Forsberg in this game. You need Forsberg in this game. So I think there's a lot of reasons to just put your best roster on the ice tonight against Pittsburgh and see what they can do. You want to end the regular season the right way. You want to use this as a springboard into the postseason, and it's going to look different if you pull some of your best players off the ice. So I am with you. Start basically your best players. Start the team that got you here. Dance with the girl you brought. And see what happens. And I think there are very few players on the Nashville Predators roster that will want to sit this one out. This is too good an opportunity for Nashville. So I hope to see a pretty stacked lineup.
Yeah, I think you're probably going to see that. Or at least I hope so. So yeah. Let's go back and look at the past week of the Nashville Predators hockey with some plus minus, and we'll take a look at the highs and lows of the past week coming up here in just 1 second.
First, I want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at Sleeper. Even as this regular season for the Predators is winding down, we are here to remind you that you can still have a chance to win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper. It's the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether players like Josi, Forsberg, Crosby, or Malkin will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in any given game. To win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you must correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. That's right, Preds fans, you can win 100 times your cash playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can win big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you're going to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability.
All right, and it is Monday, so let's get to some plus. I was out of frame there. Minus. You guys know how this works. We go through the past week of Predators hockey, give pluses to people or things that are on the rise, minuses to things that we don't really care for or that need some improvement. And start us off with a plus.
I'm going to jump right in with one of the more obvious pluses from the week. Fat plus, yet again, to the captain, Roman Josi. What a week he has had. 2 goals, 5 assists in the 3 games this week. If Roman Josi is not in the Norris conversation, I don't want to talk hockey anymore.
Yeah.
3rd in points by a defenseman, 1st in goals by a defenseman, 1st in power play goals by a defenseman, tied for 2nd in game-winning goals by a defenseman, 1st in game-winning assists by a defenseman, 1st in goals per game played by a defenseman. What are we even talking about if Roman Josi is not nominated for the Norris? And one of the things that I think I have come to appreciate, especially at this point in the season, is that Roman Josi had to be one of the first guys to buy into what Brunette was selling them at the beginning of the year. And that cost Roman Josi something. You remember he started out the beginning of the season and it was not the typical role that we saw for Roman Josi. There was a lot of adjustments that he personally had to make that affected his stats and his play for a little while. But he stuck with it, and I think he brought the team along with him. So for me, Roman Josi, for on-ice performance, for being the leader that this team needs, and for, heaven help us, certainly being a Norris Trophy nominee, he gets a big fat plus from me.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to see more from like the national writers and stuff too.
Yes,
About Josi as a contender. So I don't know. There's still part of me that's like, I don't know if they're gonna go for it, but I'm kind of thinking Josi should definitely be in that top 3
I
this
would
year.
hope. Yeah. How about
And
you? Give us a plus.
do what?
Give us a plus.
All right. Well, I'm gonna give a plus to Luke Evangelista, and
Let's go.
this is a guy who just, and we talked about it a little bit last week too, just slowly but surely, with every passing game, seems to be getting more and more comfortable with being a top 6 guy in the
Yes.
NHL. His ever since the point streak started, the 18-game point streak back in February,
Mhm.
it just seems like Evangelista is kind of hitting that upward stride, that upward trajectory. And you're starting to see it come to fruition a little bit on the score sheet. 4 points this past weekend, all assists. His setup on, I can't remember whose goal it was in that Columbus game, but his just cross-ice setup.
Roman Yossis, I
It
think.
was Yosi's goal. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
That setup was a type of play you see top line centers in the NHL make on a routine basis, and he's starting to make it. And he had in the Chicago when he was on the power play a very good sort of sleight of hand play against the Blackhawks to open things up for Philip Forsberg's first goal. Kind of fake that shot, go in, lean on the stick, pass it down to O'Reilly, who passed it to Forsberg for an easy tip in. He's starting to get it, and boy, and it's just after seeing him in the second half of the season, if he continues this momentum, the Predators have a legitimate young top 6 playmaker that they have at their employ right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I don't know that I would have seen that. I don't know that I expected to see him where he's at right now at the beginning of the season. So I think the growth has been difficult for Luke Evangelista at times. Remember, he's been a healthy scratch, but exponential by far. And I think he could be a little bit of a sneaky X factor in the postseason. So I'm excited to see what he does in his first postseason.
Yeah, 100%. And it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Is there a minus from hockey you would like to talk about?
You know what? It was actually hard to come up with a minus, but there is one thing that I do think we need to just talk about. And for me, that is that Alexander Carrier left the Columbus game after a hard hit into the boards. Left the game. Roman Josi finished out the game kind of double shifting with Lazan while Carrier was out. Don't know that this is something serious. Even if Carrier isn't in the lineup tonight against Pittsburgh, I don't know that that necessarily means it's a serious injury. It may mean, hey, he got banged up and let's just give him a rest. You don't want Alexander Carrier injured in the postseason. He and Lazan have been such a good pair together. They play very, very well together. They complement each other very well. You don't want injuries, period. Now, the Predators do still have Tyson Barrie. They could call up Mark Del Gaizo. It's not like there is a desert when it comes to defensemen, but you want Alexander Carrier on the ice in the postseason. So for me to see him go out of that game and go down the tunnel, little bit of a concern.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I think you want everybody healthy 100% going into playoffs, and keep the way Carrier's been playing. Certainly a big loss. And that's sort of the other point from what we were talking about the last segment is, you don't want to put somebody out there in a game like this and risk it. But yeah, what can you do?
Yeah.
I'm going to give a minus to the ownership of the Arizona Coyotes, who, as we now know, it seems like they're officially moving to Salt Lake City. It sounds like the players were notified on Friday that it is happening. And it's from what we've gathered from various reports and, the lovely reporting of our Locked On Coyotes team, it sounds like it's maybe been sort of in the works for a while.
Yeah.
So, and here's the thing. for everybody that's making the joke about, well, what fans are sad about the Coyotes moving? They don't have fans, or they're playing in a college arena. Look at what the Coyotes have done for Arizona since they've gotten there. The Phoenix hockey market has absolutely taken off. They got they've had the Tucson Roadrunners there. They've had these wonderful youth programs popping around the area. They're yielding NHL players. Austin Matthews, the guy who could hit 70 goals this season, the guy who was the MVP last year, came up through some of these Arizona youth programs. You have, the Doan child. Can't remember his first name, but I'm sure he's lovely.
Yes.
Just made his NHL debut.
Great.
He, of course, because his dad is Shane Doan, grew up in the area. So for me, I think it's just, and we talked about this last week when it was kind of announced too, so I won't rehash everything, but it's such a waste. And
so sad.
For people that say, oh, there's no hockey fans in Arizona, go back and watch the Coyotes playoff runs of the late 90s when Jeremy Roenick and Keith Tkachuk were there. Go watch like the late or the very early 2010s when Mike Smith and Ilya Brizgalov, Keith Yandel, Shane Doan were running things there, and just watch the crowd and see how crazy they get, see how passionate they are. Give this team a good team to cheer for, a good franchise to get behind, and people in the desert are going to show up to watch hockey. And I'm, heartbroken for the Coyotes fans who don't get to, experience anymore because of what just sounds like decades upon decades of just mismanagement.
Yeah, it's so sad. And as a franchise that at one point thought the Predators were going to have to move somewhere else, it's just terrible to see it come to fruition somewhere. So yeah, it sucks. Yeah.
We can't end on that though, Anne. So let's give one last plus out before we call it a night.
I want to give a plus to the fans at Bridgestone Arena because this has become the electric place. When I was at the Winnipeg Jets game on Tuesday night, I'm telling you, the place was insane. I talked briefly to Kevin Lincoln and he's like, is this what the playoffs are going to be like? And I'm like, that on steroids. It's just going to be crazy. And I just wanted to play just a quick little soundbite to end this plus. What Andrew Brunette had to say after the Columbus game about what it is like to be on the bench in Bridgestone Arena as a Predators coach and as a player. So this is what he had to say.
Carried us here through a stretch of these home games. I think they were ready to blow the top off tonight. We just didn't really give me a risen in the third period. But to see the fang fingers out and to see we didn't have quite the electricity we had the other night and the games prior to that. Obviously the score dictated some of that, but it's fun to see it out, and it's fun to hear the crowd. It's fun to feel the bench shake, and we're really looking forward to playing a playoff game here.
Does the bench shake a lot?
It does, actually. Yeah, surprisingly, it's pretty cool. And I remember playing in here at times. The ice shakes too, so it's as loud as it gets, and it's a fun atmosphere to be in.
Cannot wait.
Yep.
To make the bench and the ice shake in the playoffs, because that Nashville Predators fans are going to bring it when those games take place at Bridgestone Arena. So shout out to the fans that come to Bridgestone Arena and just bring that energy. It's been amazing.
Yep. And I am 100% here for it. We have been talking about wanting some good playoff atmosphere here for, honestly, since I don't know, and it's been a long time since we've been this excited about a Predators team getting into the Stanley Cup, just because it seems like there's some real belief here that maybe the Predators could, sneak out something and maybe be a dark horse here. But, we'll have to see. But I'm excited for it, and I'm excited to see playoff hockey back at Bridgestone Arena. We do have to eat our peas and carrots before we get our playoff dessert, though. Predators take on the Pittsburgh Penguins tonight at Bridgestone, or no, not at Bridgestone Arena, at PPG Paints Arena.
Yes, PPG Paints Arena.
PPG Paints Arena. We will have a recap of that tomorrow and have a better idea of who the Predators playoff matchup will be. Until we get there, though, thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back with an all-new episode tomorrow. We'll see you then.